Hey everyone, Egman here with another video, and last night I held my first One Piece event of the 2025 year. It was my OP09 quad win-a-box, 128 players. I'm super happy with all you guys showing up. It was a lot of fun. You guys really did support it, and I just really had a great time with it. So a couple of things though before we start and go over this one. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of One Piece content. Also, big shout out to my co-commentator Russell, as well as my judges of Ying and Risu. I would not be able to make that tournament happen without them. And if you guys want to find the live stream, it's linked in the description. It's on YouTube, free to watch right now. And then lastly, before we get into it, there has been a new coat of paint on the website. If you guys haven't seen it already, highly recommend to check it out if you haven't. So I'm still kind of working on the format, so this might not be the way that I do deck list pages from now on, but I do like implementing the table here. It lets us kind of go through the leaders, and you guys can see like the pictures of the leader too, which I think is nice. Also, if you just kind of go to the OP09 section, this is just being incrementally worked on throughout the week, but we do also have like this deck list table, which has all the leaders by deck list. So this is kind of like how we do in the video. It's the top placing leader for each list is going to be put in here for each event, so you can check that out. And I've been working on it a lot, but I'm really excited about it. I think this is going to be a really good resource for y'all. And I know a lot of people are asking for better filtering for data, and it's finally here, so I'm really excited about it. So check that out if you haven't already. But for this event in particular, we did have 128 players, 7 rounds of Swiss best of 1 into this top 16, which we had 6 Doflamingos, 3 Rob Lucci, 2 Shanks, 2 Star Deck 10 Luffy, 1 of the Star Deck 13 Luffy, and 1 Teach and Enel. So pretty similar to what we've been seeing. Obviously, we also have the leader data here. So we did have Doflamingo, Shanks, and Blackbeard taking a little bit under half, and then we had Purple Luffy bring it over the halfway mark. Some of the Star Deck 13 Luffys, some OP07 Rob Lucci, Enel, Star Deck 10 Luffy, Betty, and a couple others. So generally pretty diverse from what we've been seeing. I think Doflamingo obviously has a really good play to win ratio, right? As you see this conversion here. One thing I'll also mention too is that like Black and Yellow Luffy had a bit of a rough day today with it, only getting 1 of the top 16. And then additionally, not that many people, like it converted fine for how many people are on it. It's just interesting that not a lot of people are on the deck in particular. We will talk about Star Deck 10 Luffy, which I'm happy getting. They got 2 spots in the top 16 as well. And then big thing is that Purple Luffy, despite it being the 4th most played deck in this tournament, did not get any top 16s. It didn't get any X2 finishes even, which I looked into. So I thought that was something remarkable, and I think that's something that's just, I guess, worth noting for it. So if you guys want any more of this day, you can check it out yourself here on the website. We're going to go over the top placing leader for each one of, the top placing list for each one of these leaders, starting off with our winner, which is Robby's version of Doflamingo. And I don't have like a lot to say about this. I do think like most people kind of know what Doflamingo looks like right now. I will say that there's been kind of a choice of if we play Jozu or not. For a lot of people, I think that's been the biggest kind of decision point in deck building right now. Currently, Robby does not play it, and it worked out well for them too. Just the combination of being able to just play out a lot of bodies. We have 2 copies of Perfume, which I think that is needed if we aren't playing Jozu, since we do need a way to just attack into for game, right? When watching a lot of the games last night too, like Doflamingo can just put itself in a spot where, yeah, it feels bad, but like you just put 15 on leader and put them down to 0, and then if they don't win the next turn, you just perfume and do it again, right? So that's something that I think is really strong. I think that's something that Doflamingo has in allowed for it, because it's usually pretty healthy in the late game. Most people are focusing on your board and not your life, and so that means that you can kind of do those kind of plays too. So don't have a lot more to say. Doflamingo is very strong. Robby had a really great run, and congratulations for their first place with the Doflamingo. Next up, you got Rob Lucci. So this is Guillermo's version of the deck, and this is a leader that's been around for a while, right? It's been present since release in OP07. Over like 6 months ago, it's been very, very meta, right? It's been incrementally changing throughout the last couple sets too, depending on the meta and what you're trying to beat. And I would say like Rob Lucci is probably the weakest it's ever been since release, which is not saying that it's not strong, but I think the meta is not as good for it as it has been previously. So there has been, I think, some decision points, some unique cards I think that are in Guillermo's version of the deck are Uta, which we have 2 copies of the Star Deck. This kind of is like a version of Innis Lobby. The only issue is that unlike Innis Lobby, this card can get bounced back to your hand by a 4-drop Trafalgar Law, which feels really bad. We also do have the additional copies of 2 Finger Pistols, which this does get some good removal, and the fact that it is something that you can trigger off of life is, I think, strong. It can get you games just from the fact that your opponent isn't expecting any triggers off of life, and this is a really big one that hits a lot of cards on board, and especially in like the Doflamingo matchup, so I think that helps out too. And then we also have cards like 3 copies of the Jack, 4 Moria, which isn't surprising, and then 2 Kaidos, which I really do like this card in this meta. We're playing 2 copies of it. It's something that you can get some removal with in the Blackbeard matchup, which is one of our toughest ones. Since it doesn't KO, it just puts cards into the trash. That means that with, you know, like an Ice Age and Kaido, we're able to get rid of a 10-drop Blackbeard, or we're able to get like rid of a Burgess. I think all this is good. In the Doflamingo matchup, it feels like a little bit worse because you have to discard a card, and they generally, to get rid of a 4 cost most of the time. So I do think that's something impactful too. So no Soap Sheeps in this build, which is fine. I don't think the card is like super needed, but it does help against Doflamingo since you do get rid of 2 4-drops with a combination of Rob Lucci leader effect, Soap Sheep, and the 4-drop Rob Lucci, but I digress from there. So congratulations to Guillermo for their finish there, and Rob Lucci is still in a good spot though. Again, it is probably the worst it's ever been, which is saying something. So anyways, next up you got Stardeck 13 Luffy. So this is Abishan's version of the deck here, and this has been, I think the newest tech or the newest card I've been seeing people play, especially since the Oceania finals that happened this past weekend, was the I Have My Crew card. This is a card from Stardeck 14, which this deck, like the Stardeck 14 leader, keeps surprising us, right? Like the leader itself being viable in OP07 and a little bit in OP08 as well. The fact that the 3-drop Nami blocker has been pretty good lately too, but then also this card. So activate main, draw 1 card, then after this give up to 1 character +3 cost until the end of your opponent's turn. So not only is it like free cycle, but there's situations where, you know what, I can play my 2-drop Luffy, I can play it a little bit early, I can draw a card, and then I get to make it a 5 cost, which decks like Doflamingo can't really answer very easily. Most decks are kind of targeting 4 cost, with that being like where Doflamingo plays a lot of 4 cost, right? So the fact that you have a 5 cost, so you get out of that range, is really, really good. Obviously, you can use it with like the Monkey.D.Luffy here, so it's instead an 8 cost, which means that you can't get removed by like Gravity Blade. Same thing with like the blocker Sabo. Just means like there's a lot of weird times where you are now protected because you are, your cost is out of range, right? Something else is like if you're playing against like Purple Luffy or something, you're worried about an Usohachi. If you didn't use like the Gecko Moria this turn, you can use I Have My Crew to make your Sabo an 8 cost, which means that not only is it not being able to get KO'd, but also you're able to protect it from like an Usohachi. Sanji, I think 7-drop so stuns it or arrests it, but you're putting them on another card instead of like 2 different cards. So otherwise, I think, obviously this deck is good. It's going to continue to be good. I'll still probably say that this is the strongest deck in the format, though. It is obviously a lot tougher to play, I think, at a high level than many other decks, so that does hinder it. And it has also been around for a long time, so I know some people want something new as well. But this is the Abishan's version of the deck. Congratulations for their finish with Monkey.D.Luffy. So not surprising, first top 4 has what I would argue the strongest 3 decks in the game right now, but we've got some more variety for the last 4 here. So starting off with Shanks. So this is Rollie's version of Shanks. And we saw quite a bit of games from Rollie for this event too. So this is a pretty interesting build and a lot of interesting, I'd say, attacks. Like Shanks, I think, is a deck where there's enough cards that you get to play it with your own ratios and your own cards that you want to use. So particular cards, I'd say, are one, we are playing Uta as a searcher, but only playing 3 copies of it. We are playing 2 copies of Building Snake, which did become relevant in one of the matchups. So I think that's something. Not everyone's playing this. I know like it's a card that doesn't have counter, but it is searchable since it's a red hair pirates, which half of our deck is, which is nice there. We got our 2Ks. We got Lucky Roo. I kind of like Silver's Rayleigh at more than 1 copy. I think this is a really strong blocker in some matchups, especially with the draw 2, but I do like the Yasop, which we're playing at 5 copies. We're playing the Ace, which is something that we're just able to put on board and kind of sit there. We're playing the Beckman. We're playing 2 Newgates and Silvers. So 8 cards with removal is quite a lot, and I think that does help. against Doflamingo in particular, since we will almost always see some removal card by 8 Dawn at a high level. Or if we go first, we're able to find like 6 different cards that are able to do that between the Ben Beckman and the Edward Newgate. We've got the Dragon here, which we're only playing 1 copy, so a swag copy of it, but still a really strong card. I would probably try to find room for 2 of it, but I digress. And then we've got 5 10-cost Shanks across the OP09 one and the OP06 one, and then a single copy of the Goldie Roger. So no copies of the Red Hawk. We are playing 2 Rad Beams instead, which I don't think that's wrong either. I think that's just a good decision at times where we do have this potential. But honestly, like the only thing with Shanks is that like since we were playing so many like 10 drops and stuff, like a 1 cost or 2 cost doesn't make like a big difference for me because there's nothing that we play for like 9, right? The fact that we're either like spending 8 Dawn that turn or 10 Dawn that turn means that we have room for Red Hawk to be viable, or we don't have anything open since we play like a 10 cost Shanks or something. But regardless, I still think this deck is really good. It's just like the 50-50 master where most matchups for this are winnable and losable at the same time. So they're usually a little bit. I like just watching games with this because you really don't know who's going to win for most of these matchups too. But this is Rollie's build. Congratulations for their finish with Shanks. Next up, you got Andrew's version of MArshall.D.Teach, and this has probably been one of the more talked of leaders in this meta right now. And it's mostly because like a lot of people, including myself, thought it was going to be very strong into this meta, and it's just been kind of lackluster. I think it's been topping occasionally, but nothing at like a super strong force. And it's something that I think that is really held back by just how good Doflamingo is in this meta. It's likely, if not confirmed, its worst matchup in this meta right now, which is tough when it's the most present leader right now. A lot of people are on it. It's very present, and so because of that, Teach has a little bit of a hard time keeping up with how much aggression that deck can output to. So I have been seeing like a little bit of tax here and there. Probably the biggest tech I've been seeing is the addition of the Shockwave, which has been at like 1 or 2 copies. So counter up to one of your leaders or characters gains plus 4k power during this battle, then KO up to one of your opponent's active characters cost of 3 or less. So this is really good for getting rid of like a 2-drop MArshall.D.Teach against Dofi, and in some other matchups you get some good removal. But like even then, like the fact that it gets rid of a 3 cost instead of a 4 cost, I think is kind of tough for the deck. And this deck doesn't really mind if you play like a really tall card, and like since you can use your 10 drop to just kind of interact with it, and even if it's like a 7 cost or 8 cost, where I think most people kind of cap out at those costs. Teach is pretty good since we are able to just kind of interact with it. But when your opponent's able to kind of spam the board with a bunch of 4, 5s, and 6 costs, that's where this deck has a lot of issue, because it doesn't really do well at clearing wide boards, but just really just kind of trading 1 for 1 and then just playing bigger bodies at the end of the game. So that's been something that's tough. I think if we find a way to make that matchup a little bit more desirable, it does help for Teach to. I think that would help that a lot. I think that's the only thing that really is holding it back right now. But it is a very complex deck. It plays different than any other leader in the game, and it's something that I think that people are kind of adjusting to and warming up to. I think the people who are playing Teach are like doubling down on trying to do their best at it, and we'll see how it does. We have our whole like Treasure Cup circuit next month, and I expect Teach to get quite a few tops from that event too. So that's all it is there. Congratulations to Andrew for their finish with Teach. And we got Star Deck 10 Luffy, which I love this deck. You guys know this. This is my favorite leader right now in this meta. And we got 2 that got an X2 finish, so I do want to go over both of them. We have Julien's and Saul's version. So I will say Saul's is probably more of the standard that I've been seeing from a lot of people, right? It's a combination of just having like the good curve up. We do have the Ben Beckman as well as the Eustace Captain Kidd. We've got 3 copies of the 9-cost Luffy. We are playing Newgate, which I really don't. I personally do not like this card in the deck. I think that it like helps in Dofi sometimes, but more times than not, it's just kind of dead in hand that doesn't really do anything. Since once you're like past the 5k leader, being between like a 6k and an 8k leader doesn't make difference in some scenarios. Sometimes it does make a difference, but it's just like a little bit rougher from what I've been seeing. We are playing 1 copy of the 10-cost Luffy, which I've been like tinkering with, like, is how many do we actually play of this card. Sometimes it does get you in some good spots, but sometimes it is a little bit put you up behind a little bit, and then 1 copy of 10 cost Shanks, which I do. If you're able to ramp to this card and hit this on like turn 4, you feel like you've won the game. Like your opponent is like terrified. You have it's offensive and defensive at the same time. It's one of the best cards for this deck if we get to it. It's dead, and then also if like you don't have like a Eustace Captain Kidd to be able to refresh a Dawn for Giant afterwards, you're in a bad spot too. But I think this card is worth playing, and it's a card that I've taken out, but I've been probably wanting to put it back in too. So anyways, this is I think like again Saul's version, which is a little bit more standard, and we also have Julien's version, which is a little bit more teched out when we look across it too. So we do have like the top end of 4 Kidd, 4 copies of the Monkey.D.Luffy, and 3 copies of Shanks. So a really tall top end, all things considered, and a lot of like rush cards because of it. But then like it's like the middle ground, right, where we have a lot of tech cards. You've got the promo Yamato. So on play, you may place all cards from your hand at the bottom of your deck. If you do, draw cards equal to number. So it just lets you refresh your hand with putting cards to the bottom. So that could be kind of good sometimes. We've got our ramp from the Zorjero. We have 2 Brulés, which I might, if I'm to wager, this might be a case where we only own 2 bound clay, and so we're just using the Brulé as like a backup for it. So on KO, you get to add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and rest it. So that's pretty good against everything that's not Doflamingo, since they can just bounce this back to hand. But being able to get out of an attack and get a Dawn is not too bad. We have Onami. We also have the Silvers, the Queen, and then the Yasop, which I really like this card on curve in this deck. It just feels great, especially if we are going first. So I recommend trying this card if you guys haven't already. Being a 7k leader just means like you're actively not taking any damage, which is really strong. So other than that, and we also have like the Tony Chopper blocker, which I thought was interesting, which is a Straw Hat Crew card. It's also something that we can play on 3, and then we can have like some like good trades potentially. So if we go from like 3 to 5, we can play something like Bon Clay. And then we go to 2 active Dawn, which means that we can put them on Chopper and get like a good removal, something like that. I don't know. I think like having more blockers that we're able to find off of our Nami is not a bad thing either. So anyways, I think the only card I would say is missing is like maybe Franosuke, which neither player is playing, which does help in the Blackbeard matchup sometimes, but I digress there. So that is the build there. Congratulations to Julien and Saul for their respective finishes there. All right, and to wrap it up, we've got Jose's version of Enel, which ended up getting 16th place last night. And Enel's just kind of in a weird spot in this meta where it's really good against Doflamingo. I would say I think that's its best matchup, which is obviously the most present matchup in this meta. But outside of that, it has a lot of like kind of risky matchups too, which makes it a little bit tough. So we've been seeing a couple of new techs, I think, enter this deck from OP09, where it's mostly just adding Kuzan. This has been a pretty solid card for getting into the late game more consistently. On play, place up to 1 of your opponent's characters, the cost of 3 or less at the top or bottom of your opponent's life cards, face up. Your opponent trashes 1 card from their hand. So this is something that I think is really good against BY. If they play like a 1-drop Garp, you put it at like the bottom or top of their life. They're not even going to be able to get the card back, which is just super solid, and it's going to make it weird for them to go down to 0 life to do their loop, which I think is really strong. And then there's also the Lucci, which is from OP07, but more and more people I've been seeing put a couple copies of this card in their deck too. When attacking once per turn, you may add 1 card from the top or bottom of your life cards to your hand. You may rest 1 of your characters the cost of 4 or less. Then if you have 1 or less life cards, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to your life cards. So essentially it lets you draw. It doesn't let you heal, which is a bit of a like actually heal, which we desperately need like a when attacking heal for this deck, since all of our healing is on plays, and we have decks like Blackbeard that just turn off all our on plays. So that is pretty tough for us to be able to get there. But being able to just interact with 4 drops I think is good, especially when Doflamingo is still present. And then we do just have like a good amount of hard removal with like the Nami as well as the Gadatsu as well. So I don't know how I feel about it now. I think more people are kind of slowly coming back to it. I'm thinking it's a little bit stronger than it might have been perceived to be, and I think that's fine too. But yeah, I don't know. It's just so tough. There's so many tough matches for it still that it's even though like Doflamingo is so free at times, the other ones make it feel kind of bad. So I don't know. This is Jose's version. Congratulations for their build for and top with Enel, and we'll see if it continues to top in the next couple weeks. But that's going to be it for me. Again, if you guys want any of the deck lists from this event, you can find them on my website, Egman Events, which is linked below. Thank you again to everyone who showed up to these events too. These are really great, and we'll have another one in the next couple weeks or so. And then again, thank you to my co-commentator Russell, as well as our judges of Ying and Risu for helping this tournament happen too. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.